Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Welcome devotees to our morning Bhagavatam class. This morning the class will actually be on Caitanya Caritamrta, Adi-Lila Chapter 2, verse 1, and with this the class will be given by His Grace Balabhadra Bhattacharya Prabhu from ISKCON Atlanta and ISKCON Philadelphia. Thank you. Hare Krishna Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
Hare Krishna, accept my obeisances to Prabhupada. Hari Bol.
Haribol. That is all yours, Prabhu.
Okay. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Jaya Sri Caitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda. Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada. Haribo, 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 Haribo. Jayam Vishnupad Paramamsha Paribraja Bhattacharya Sudhira Sri Srimad His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Nitya-Lila Pravishta Om Vishnupad Paramamsha Paribraja Bhattacharya Sudhira Sri Srimad Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Prem Se Kaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shridvaita Gadadhara Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Nath Shami Kuna Radha Kuna Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Mayapur Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Maharani Ki Jai. Shri Shri Gauni Thai Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Sharat Vihari Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Ki Jai. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Devi Ki. Jamuna Mai Ganga Mai Ki. Samveda Bhaktivinoda Ki. Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki. Go Premanande Hari Hari Bol. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Agyanatimirandasa Jananjanan Salakaya Chaksumilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruvay Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manovistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swaram Rupagadaja Gadamayam Dadati Swabadantika. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda. Jaya Jaya Sri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaur Bhaktavinda. So Anasuya Prabhu?
Yes, Prabhu.
So when I do the verse, are we going to have devotees repeat it?
Yes, Prabhu.
Okay. So I'm going to read first the introduction to this chapter. This is the beginning of Adi-Lila chapter 2, text number 1. This chapter explains that Lord Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna himself. Therefore, the Brahman effulgence is the bodily luster of Lord Chaitanya, and the localized supersoul situated in the heart of every living entity is his partial representation. The Purusha avatars are also explained in this connection. Mahavishnu is the reservoir of all conditioned souls. But, as confirmed in the authoritative scriptures, Lord Krishna is the ultimate fountainhead, the source of numerous plenary expansions, including Narayan, who is generally accepted by Mayavadi philosophers to be the absolute truth. The Lord's manifestation of Prabhava and Vaibhava expansions, as well as partial incarnations and incarnations with delegated powers, are also explained. Lord Krishna's ages of boyhood and youth are discussed. And it is explained that his age at the beginning of youth is his eternal form. The spiritual sky contains innumerable spiritual planets, the Vaikunthas, which are manifestations of the Supreme Lord's internal energy. Innumerable material universes are similarly exhibited by his external energy, and the living entities are manifested by his marginal energy. Because Lord Krishna, let me see that I have it right. Because Lord Krishna, Caitanya is not different from Lord Krishna. Did I read that correctly? Let me see. Because Lord Krishna, yeah, it's interesting. Because Lord Krishna Caitanya, because Lord Krishna Caitanya is not different from Lord Krishna. He is the cause of all causes. There is no cause beyond him. He is eternal, and his form is spiritual. Lord Caitanya is directly the Supreme Lord, Krishna, as the evidence of authoritative scriptures proves. This chapter stresses that a devotee who wishes to advance in Krishna consciousness must have knowledge of Krishna's personal form, his three principal energies, his pastimes, and the relationship of the living entities with him. Now we'll read the verse. Shri Caitanya Prabhum Vande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Tarin Nana Mata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram Sri Caitanya Prabhum Vande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Tarin Nana Mata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram Sri Caitanya Prabhum Vande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Tarin Nana Mata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram. Vishnu Guru Prabhu.
Sri Chaitanya Prabhum Vande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Tarin Nana Matagraha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Parikshit Prabhu.
Prabhu, Mother Gita is on.
Okay, please go ahead.
Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Vande Balo Api Yad Anugrahat Tarena Namata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Shri Chaitanya Prabhu Vande Baloti Yad Anugrahat Taranana Matagraha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Sri Chaitanya Prabhum Vande Balopi Yad Anugrahat Tarenana Mata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Shri Chaitanya Prabhum Vande Balo Api Yad Anugrahat Tarena Nana Matgraha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Anyone else?
Hare Krishna.
Haribo.
Sri Chaitanya Prabhu Vande Balo Pi Yad Anugrahat Tare Nana Mata Graha Vyaptam Siddhanta Sagaram.
Very nice. So word for word, Sri Chaitanya Prabhum. To Lord Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Vande, I offer obeisances. Bala, an ignorant child. Api, even. Yat, of whom. Anugrahat, by the mercy. Tared, may cross over. Na, various. Mata, of theories. Graha, the crocodiles. Vyaptam, filled with. Siddhanta, of conclusions. Sagaram, the ocean. Translation purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. I offer my obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusions about the ultimate truth, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. Report. By the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, even an inexperienced boy with no educational culture can be saved from the ocean of nescience or nescience, which is full of various types of philosophical doctrines that are like dangerous aquatic animals. The philosophy of the Buddha, the argumentative presentations of the Jnanis, the yoga systems of Patanjali and Gautama, and the systems of philosophers like Kanada, Kapila, and Bhattacharya, or dangerous creatures in the ocean of nescience or nescience. By the grace of Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, one can have real understanding of the essence of knowledge by avoiding these sectarian views and accepting the lotus feet of Krishna as the ultimate goal of life. Let us all worship Lord Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu for his gracious mercy to the conditioned souls. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prastha Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Itinamine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravana Vicharni Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschatade Starne. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So this verse from Caitanya Caritamrta, at least in my mind, brings up what may be considered controversial. I'll let you all decide whether it's controversial or not. But in my mind, it feels like that. Even from the beginning of the purport, where Srila Prabhupada says, by the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, even an inexperienced boy. So for me, that seems to point to devotees who have come to the shelter of Srila Prabhupada's lotus feet. It could be pointing to something else, but that's what I'm seeing. Inexperienced boy, meaning when the devotees came to Srila Prabhupada in the beginning, they were very, very inexperienced, had no idea. They had no idea how to even address Srila Prabhupada. They used to call him Swamiji, because they didn't know his divine grace and Prabhupada and all that. Swamiji. Like one description that says that Prabhupada, when he was doing arti, his little arti, and the devotees wouldn't disturb him, they say Swamiji is doing the bells. That's how they describe the arti. Swamiji is doing the bells. So they're obviously very inexperienced. And whatever they might have conceived of as the essence of Krishna consciousness, more than likely was not exactly on point, but it was innocent, innocently trying to follow what they thought Srila Prabhupada was explaining, or what they understood from what he was explaining from his classes. So that's one point that sticks out to me. But even more controversial, especially one of the names that he mentions in the purport, Bhattacharya. And I'm going to read a little bit from the Bhagavatam about Bhattacharya, because he's saying here that the philosophy of Buddha, who we know to be one of the Dasa avatars, one of the incarnations of the Lord, the argumentative presentations of the Jnanis, the yoga system of Patanjali, and in several places he talks about the authorized practice of the yoga system from Patanjali, from the different revealed scriptures, and Gautam, and the systems of philosophers like Kanada. Now, the Kapila mentioned here is not Lord Kapila. It's the atheist Kapila. And that's also explained. I'll read that for a second. And then Bhattacharya. So it just, my brain couldn't settle on it. When I looked at the description of who Bhattacharya is, how is it that he's included? It says, are dangerous creatures in the ocean of nescience. The philosophies of these persons, dangerous creatures in the oceans of nescience. And the verse is actually saying, I offer my obeisances to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusions about the ultimate truth, which is full of the crocodiles of various theories. So that's it's very, very harsh words, crocodiles. of various theories, very harsh words. So then how do we apply this in our development of Krishna consciousness? Is this referring to anything to do with us, or is it just something external to us? Is Srila Prabhupada is the verse, and then Srila Prabhupada himself just talking about things that are not related to us? This could never happen to us. There could never be any misunderstandings of the philosophy from us because we're devotees. That's how we think sometimes, but there have been many, many deviations. I'm going to share two of those later. So I want you to keep in mind, because I want to have a nice group discussion toward the end of this class, is that, let me see, I wrote it down so I wouldn't get it wrong. What are some examples of deviations that might come from practicing devotees? And the reason I brought that up, because here is talking about Lord Buddha, Bhattacharya, Patanjali. These are very exalted persons. Don't get this, as they say in modern vernacular, don't get it twisted. These are very, very exalted personalities. Lord Buddha is an incarnation of the Lord, Das Avatar. So if it can happen from that perspective, then it most certainly can happen from our limited perspective. We can definitely misunderstand certain aspects of the philosophy, and then take that misunderstanding and turn it into presentations. Even right now, I'm trying to speak about it. I may be not exactly on point. I'm trying my best to be, trying my very best to be, but I might miss a few elements. And that's why I'm so thankful to have devotees like Parikshit Prabhu and Vishnu Gada and Mother Gita to sort of add into this, because I'm trying to come to a clear understanding myself. It's not that I'm trying to tell you something. I'm hoping that we can help each other, help to protect each other from deviations, even from quote unquote recognized exalted persons. That's the essence of what I'm seeing here in this verse and purport, especially in the purport. So he talks about, of course, we know Lord Buddha as Das Avatar, but we also understand that Lord Buddha, he preached this Buddhistic philosophy, and Srila Prabhupada calls it covered atheism. But there was a purpose. This is the incarnation of the Lord coming with a purpose. And he's presenting the philosophy of Buddhistic philosophy in a certain way to deviate people from the misunderstanding of the Vedic knowledge, using the Vedas to justify animal slaughter and so many things. So Buddha said, you don't need that. Very simple, simplistic way of explaining his philosophy. It's very complicated, very deep philosophy, and the Buddhist people are very dedicated to that philosophy. And they know, I was sitting on an interfaith council once with a Buddhist gentleman, and he said, I know that you Hare Krishnas know that Buddha is an incarnation. I know that, okay? I know he's Das Avatar. I understand all that. Then he went on to explain his philosophy. So the Buddhist philosophy covered atheism, but it's coming from an incarnation of the Lord. Don't forget, exalted personality. And he's speaking something that we should not follow. Now, there are elements of Buddhism that, resonates with us, being kind to others, not killing animals, and so many things like that. So we resonate with that. But the basic philosophy, the atheistic part, we should avoid it. It's a crocodile. Crocodiles of various theories. Then he talks about Patanjali. So in the Gita, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, text 27, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, the yoga system conceived by Patanjali is referred to herein. The Yoga Sutra of Patanjali. In the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, the soul is called Pratyag Atma and Parag Atma. As long as the soul is attached to sense enjoyment, it is called Parag Atma. The soul is subjected to the functions of 10 kinds of air at work within the body. And this is perceived through the breathing system. The Patanjali system of yoga instructs one on how to control the functions of the body's air in a technical manner, so that ultimately all the functions of the air within become favorable for purifying the soul of material attachment. According to this yoga system, Pratyag Atma is the ultimate goal. This Pratyag Atma is a withdrawal from activities and matter. The senses interact with the sense objects like the ear for hearing, eyes for seeing, nose for smelling, tongue for tasting, hand for touching, and all of them are thus engaged in activities outside the self. They are called the functions of the prana vayu. So here, he's saying that this Patanjali is a system from the Vedic culture, the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. So very elevated, okay, very elevated, but still a crocodile. Crocodile is being referred to in reference to this term, crocodiles of various theories. So we don't want to go down that road. It's like when you're going down a road to a particular location and you've been instructed, stay on the road, don't deviate, stay on the road. And then someone says, oh, but it looks interesting over there. And they deviate and then they get lost. And then maybe they never get back on the road. So the path of devotional service is straight and narrow, very straight. Bhajitam priti purvakam, serving with love, serving the spiritual master, following, footsteps of great acharyas, very straight. And then we start to deviate to these other things, whether it's Buddhism or yoga. We don't want to decry yoga, the physical yoga practice. Like here it's talking about the prana and breathing and all that, because it's a physical additive, I would say, that we can use some of that in our efforts to try to maintain a healthy body to serve Krishna. But the ultimate goal is to serve Krishna. People get deviated and start thinking this is the ultimate goal, to attain perfection in yoga practice. It's not the ultimate goal. It's something that can be used just like a car. A car can be used in Krishna service, like clothing that we wear. We can use that in Krishna service. The system that we're using right now, I was thinking about it this morning. I can almost assure you wouldn't find this many devotees at a Bhagavatam class physically, pretty much anywhere at ISKCON right now, except Mayapur and some big temples. This facility of Zoom and the computers, Srila Prabhupada didn't have that, of course. So now that and it's not just because of COVID, but it's actually pretty interesting. You can have this many devotees in the morning for a class. Wow. So we're using this system, but we're not thinking this is the ultimate end of our goal of life, is to have a fancy computer and a computer system and all that stuff. We find some way to use it for Krishna. So the yoga system can be used for physical enhancement of your body, like Ayurveda. You can use Ayurveda medicines and all those things, but they're not the ultimate goal. What is that verse in Bhagavad Gita? Traigunya Vishaya Veda, Nistraigunya Bhavarjana. The Vedas mainly deal with the three modes of material nature. Therefore, Krishna says one must rise above that. Rise above it. So that stays in line to what this point about the crocodiles of various theories. We want to avoid them. Then he talks about Gautama and Kanada. And this is from Krishna's Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then there are philosophers headed by Gautama and Kanada. They have minutely studied the cause and effect of the material elements and have ultimately come to the conclusion, see here it says, various theories, conclusion, Siddhanta. They have come to the conclusion that the atomic combination is the original cause of creation. Okay, this is their conclusion. Crocodile. It's one of those crocodiles. And we have to be careful. Like if you're in a river or wherever the crocodiles are, my God, it's dangerous like anything. So this world is filled with crocodiles of various theories. Let me read this verse again. I offer my obeisances to Sri Caitanya Mahaprabhu, by whose mercy even an ignorant child can swim across the ocean of conclusions about the ultimate truth. So they're talking about the ultimate truth. Many times when I'm speaking, especially like in a university setting or something like that, I learned this many years ago from a couple of my god brothers, but especially Aja Prabhu. Aja was an excellent preacher. I mean, an excellent preacher. So he would start his class by saying, what is the highest truth that you know? He would put the people on the spot. What is the highest truth that you know? And to this day, I use that when I'm talking to people. What is the highest truth that you know? Instead of me trying to tell them my conclusion of Krishna consciousness, let me find out where they are. And generally speaking, people have a hard time answering that question. What's the highest truth that you know? It just takes a while for them to put it into perspective. And they really don't understand the ultimate truth of the personality of Godhead. So these conclusions about the ultimate truth are like crocodiles, but we can swim across that river filled with these crocodiles by the mercy of Lord Caitanya, who is none different from Krishna. And by the mercy of their genuine representatives like Srila Prabhupada, as long as we don't deviate. If you deviate, then the crocodiles will get you. And a crocodile is a dangerous creature. The mouth of a crocodile, oh my God, if you get caught up in that, finished. So if you get caught up in these conclusions, deviate from the strict path that Srila Prabhupada has outlined for us, who knows where you may end up. So then he talks about Kapila from the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So Kapila is incarnation, and he instructed his mother, Devahuti, therefore, to distinguish two Kapilas. One Kapila is the atheist Kapila, and the other Kapila is Bhagwan Kapila. Therefore, Bhagwan Kapila is known as Devahuti Putra Kapila. Both of them expounded the Sankhya philosophy, but the atheist Kapila expounded without understanding or without perception or realization of God. And here, Kapila Dev, he's expounding Sankhya philosophy to his mother personally, just like Krishna personally expounded the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita to Arjuna, his friend. Similarly, Kapila Dev, Bhagwan, he expounded the Sankhya philosophy to his mother, Devahuti. And that we are explaining. So this other Kapila, atheistic Kapila, many people, especially in India, they know about this atheist Kapila. And they conflate the two. They don't understand the difference. Devahuti, so therefore is mentioned Devahuti Kapila, a specific Kapila, who's the authorized representative personality of Godhead coming in his incarnation form. Then lastly, this is the one that kept me up all night. I just couldn't put it together. From Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, third chapter, text 11 and 12. The sixth incarnation of the Purusha was the son of the sage Atri. Now check this out. He was born from the womb of Anasuya. He was born from the womb of Anasuya, who prayed for an incarnation. Is that right, Anasuya? You prayed for an incarnation? He spoke on the subject of transcendence to Alarka, Prahlada, and others. Yadu, Hahaya, etc. Purport. The Lord incarnated himself as Dattatreya, the son of Rishi Atri and Anasuya. The history of the birth of Dattatreya as an incarnation of the Lord is mentioned in the Brahmanda Purana in connection with the story of the devoted wife. It is said there that Anasuya, the wife of Rishi Atri, prayed before the Lords Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva as follows, quote, "My lords, if you are pleased with me, and if you desire me to ask from you some sort of blessings, then I pray that you combine together to become my son," end quote. This was accepted by the Lords. And as Dattatreya, the Lord expounded the philosophy of the spirit soul, and especially instructed Alarka, Prahlad, Yadu, Hahaya, etc. So I'm thinking, how is it that he's being put in the same discussion about the crocodiles of various theories? Somehow I just couldn't fix it in my mind. So from my understanding is that all of these philosophies that were mentioned in this purport are not to the highest standard. That is the goal for the devotees. And it's interesting, for almost like the last 2 weeks, every lecture that Srila Prabhupada, we listen every morning to a lecture from Srila Prabhupada, and I send it out to all the devotees in Atlanta. And if you all notice, I know Mother Gita's on the call, in those lectures for the last almost 20 or 25 lectures have been on this one verse from the Srimad Bhagavatam, 1, 2, 6. Savai pum samparo dharmo ito bhaktir adhok saje ahaitu kya pratihata Yayatma suprasidati. In fact, the lecture I was listening to this morning before this class, same verse, same exact verse. And I was thinking, but every lecture has been different aspects of it. How in the world can Prabhupada give 25, 30 lectures on the same verse, and each one sounds fresh and new and different? It's amazing to me. So I have to assume that it's such an important point that he gave this lecture so many times. We know the important points, like, for instance, Dehi no sminyata dehi kalmaram yoga. We know that verse, Bhagavad Gita chapter 12, text 13, right? We know that verse. And Prabhupada lectures on that point constantly. So same thing with the Savai Pumsam Paro, Paro Dharma, sublime occupation. Translation, the supreme occupation, dharma, for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service and to the transcendent Lord. Such a devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. So a little bit at the end of the purport, material existence is temporary, illusory, and full of miseries. There is no happiness at all. There is just a futile attempt to get rid of the miseries. And temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable, and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful, and all-cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation. This is sometimes polluted when mixed with the inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Absolutely a deviation. Which leads me to some of the practical deviations that have happened in our movement. And I asked you in the beginning, try to think of some situations like that, maybe in your own personal life where you might have deviated and how you brought yourself back on the path. Because you're still here. I see we're all still here. I've been here for whatever number of years. Vishnu Gada has been here for so many years. All of you have been here for so somehow, whether you deviated slightly or not, somehow you're still here. Somehow you were able to stay on this path. And your experience of staying on this path could help someone else who might be struggling to stay on this path. So don't hold back. If you have something you can share, please help us on this. So one major deviation that some of you may not have heard about, but Vishnu Gada Prabhu and myself know very well this major deviation. And it happened during the time of Srila Prabhupada. The merciful situation was during that time, Srila Prabhupada could catch those deviations and right the ship and get the devotees who were willing to surrender, get them back on the path. Because sometimes the devotees left, they couldn't get back on the path. I told you, when you're going down that road, you were told how to go to that location, and then you deviated and you got lost. It's not easy to get back. It may take you decades to get back, if you even get back. So this deviation was called the Gopi Bhava, and here it's called club. We used to call it clique, the Gopi Bhava club controversy. So I'm just going to read the letter from Srila Prabhupada regarding that. Early in the summer of 1976, Srila Prabhupada wrote to a disciple he suspected of dabbling in higher things. Look at the words. Dabbling, checking out these other higher things in Krishna, so-called Vaishnava culture. In the company of a Radhakunda Babaji. So they were dabbling in these things in the company of these Babajis in Radhakunda. Quote, here in Los Angeles, we have found that there is a group of about 40 devotees who privately meet to discuss the intimate pastimes, artificially thinking that they can enter into the understanding of the gopis prematurely. This will create havoc in our society. And the result will be that if this is allowed to go on, our preaching work will be greatly hampered. This premature desire to understand the Leela of Krishna is due to mundane sex life desire, as we have seen amongst many of the Babajis and Sahajiyas in Vrindavan. There's a letter to Nitai Das, Los Angeles, 7th June, 1976. So that was a major deviation. Let me give you a personal deviation. And then hopefully if any of you have any ideas and if you've experienced anyone, how you got back on the track. So this one refers to the Morari Band that was started in Atlanta, the Morari Band. And we were very successful in many different ways. The initial attempt was to preach through music. Our temple president, Balabhadra Prabhu, inspired us to do that. And we wrote many beautiful songs and recorded albums and distributed tens and tens of thousands of records and cassettes on Sankirtan. The deviation came two parts. One part was the record distribution, cassette distribution replaced the book distribution because we were making so much money selling the music. So then we just stopped selling books. And it was so embarrassing. I met Michael Jackson on Sankirtan at the airport. There was Michael Jackson walking with one security person. I had no books to give him. We only had Morari cassettes. So I said, I got to give him something. So I ran over and said, Hare Krishna, Michael. He said, thank you, brother. And I gave him a little cassette. But I was thinking, I had no books because we were out just selling the music to make money. The bigger deviation came when we started performing our music in nightclubs. Now, how did we get back on track? It was difficult. It was a horrible environment. How we got back on track, at least my heart, one morning we were coming back from a club that we played in Atlanta. We were very well known in Atlanta. We changed the name to accommodate material modalities. We changed it from Morari to New Money. It was ridiculous. So anyway, coming back from the nightclub at around 3 or 4 in the morning, unloading our band equipment in the temple, guess who I saw going to Mangalarti? Bhattacharya Swami. Bhattacharya Swami was in Atlanta that time. And I was so embarrassed. Krishna blessed us, at least me, so embarrassed. How can we do this? Coming back when devotees are going to Mangalarti. I said, this is nonsense. It was a deviation. I have to humbly admit it was a major deviation, but we got back on track and somehow, we're still serving Srila Prabhupada. So that happened for me. The getting back on track was seeing the devotional service of the devotees. It just inspired me, and especially Bhattacharya Swami. It was like so inspiring to see him walking from the one building to the next building, going to Mangalarti. I said, this has to stop. We can't. It was like, I hope he doesn't see me. It was so embarrassing, So I don't know if any of you have any experiences where you went through something like that and you were able to pull yourself back. What was the process? Does anyone have anything they would like to share? We can discuss a little bit. I don't want to embarrass anyone, but anyway.
I'm not going to be embarrassed.
Go ahead, Vishnu.
But it wasn't just in Atlanta that the record phenomenon became prominent. It was many places in the movement. There was Mangalananda Prabhu's record was called
Change of Heart.
Change of Heart. Yeah, that record. And then in New York, they made another record called Open the Doors to Your Heart. And it was, it was had some philosophy in it, go open the doors to your heart and let Govinda in. Yeah. But so that was going on all over I read something. I looked at I got you can still see there's YouTube videos of that song, those songs from Open the Doors to Your Heart. Mm-hmm. And there's comments, at the bottom of the YouTube, they have comments, and then you have devotees from France and Germany, and it's, oh yeah, we were distributing this record, this, I remember that. So all over the movement it happened, for some time. As you mentioned, it replaced
totally
book distribution, or at least it certainly took a bigger place than was important, was warranted. And I mean, it's also a little bit controversial in some places. There was the selling of paintings. Mm-hmm. You remember that?
Oh yeah.
So And some places in the world, they made quite the temples made huge amounts of money selling paintings. And then if there was a question, well, oh, they must be Krishna conscious because they have all this money, right? So, and then you mentioned it very nicely how staying out late to do the clubs. I know the devotees in London were also doing clubs in the early days.
Oh, wow.
And they found it difficult. And also in Giriraj Swami's book, I'll Build You a Temple, he describes a very nice section where he and Tamal Krishna Maharaj and some others were really working hard to collect Lakshmi for the different temples in Bombay. And so they had rented a separate apartment. At that time, they didn't the temple was in a kind of a shed on Juhu. So they rented a separate apartment close to where most of the business people were, and they didn't have morning programs and stuff like that. And they were staying out late. And Prabhupada said, so you're going to become a karmi. And he said that that's you have to go in the morning and evening program. And even if you stay out late, then you have to get up. And wow. I know that and I did that same thing too at a certain point that I was in charge of doing, what we call life membership programs. You go out someplace way out in the boondocks, and so it was very difficult, very difficult. But Prabhupada made it very clear that this is the program to, as you mentioned, like Bhattacharya Maharaj showed by his example, to rise early. You can take an exception because I'm doing this kind of service or that kind of service. I mean, once in a long while, but not make it regular by any means. So yeah, those deviations there. I mean, I'm thinking, these are different philosophers that Srila Prabhupada mentions in the purport that are famous in India, and they're actually very thorough philosophies, developed philosophies. In the West, we have other philosophies that can deviate people too. Like there's the existential philosophy and the Epicurean philosophies and all these kinds of philosophies that still have their sway. They're kind of very puny in relation to these philosophies, but still they're influential. And sometimes we find ourselves or devotees getting carried away with some of those things. You gotta, the whole purpose of life is to enjoy as much as you can while you have the time, these kinds of things.
Was that Charvak's philosophy, right?
Charvak Muni, yeah. So there's different brands of it here in the West, of course, too. Wow. And you have Timothy Leary's philosophy. You got to turn in something, a tune in, turn out, something like that, drop out. Yeah. And he said, every person, every parent should try LSD. Otherwise, how will they know what their kids are doing? That philosophy was accepted even by, some very advanced or very developed people in ISKCON. You know that.
There you go.
So there's that by taking a certain kind of drug that you can make spiritual advancement is that's even now, people say that, I smoke marijuana because it helps me to be, religious. Peaceful. Yeah, peaceful. All that stuff. These things happen.
Wow. That was very, very, very insightful. Thank you so much, Prabhu. It's again that following that straight and narrow, that path, and not deviating. And the path has been chalked out, given to us by Srila Prabhupada. It's so simple. And we just, like you say, you get interested. You see these little shiny things, and you go that way and check it out. And you might think that I'm strong enough to check it out. Maybe, but you might not be. There's a drama that devotees did in Vrindavan one time. And it was interesting. I don't remember the whole drama. I just remember this one part where this devotee went out by himself on Sankirtan, and this yogi was trying to attract him. And he was saying, Om Shanti, Om Anti Shanti, Om, Om, Om. And he would do like that to the devotee. And the devotee's head started going with this yogi like that, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om, Om, Om. And before you know it, the devotee was singing, Om Shanti, Om Shanti, Om, Om, Om. And then another devotee came and said, Prabhu, come on, this is ridiculous. Come back. and pulled him back. So I wrote down here, what are some of the best ways to avoid deviations? In this case, with that devotee, another devotee pulled him back. In my case, it was seeing Bhattacharya Swami pulled me back, at least. I can't speak for the whole band. I know it just snapped me out of that illusion that this is the right thing to do. Well, so what are some ways to avoid deviations? Does anyone have any ideas they'd like to share? Various ways that we can avoid deviations. Now, you have to understand these deviations. That's why I asked you in the beginning, do you know of any? Can you remember any? Because if you can't identify them, you might be in one of them, or you might get trapped in one of them if you can't identify them. Like that Gopi Baba was very, I looked up a word, insidious. That word just kept coming in my mind. Insidious sounds almost like a word from a horror movie, but insidious means having a gradual and cumulative effect, subtle, the insidious pressures of modern life, of a disease developing so gradually as to be well established before becoming apparent. So this Gopi Baba thing, it was starting to spread. We had a devotee in Atlanta, a wonderful devotee, and he would walk around the temple saying, "Remember the gopis, remember the gopis, remember the gopis, remember the." It's like, but he got it from LA, from that Gopi Baba. And he started doing it in Atlanta. But our president was so on top of stuff. He stopped that. He nipped it in the bud. So you have to understand, you have to be able to identify them in order to avoid them. Okay? Just like when you're on that road, sometimes there's a sign says, a cliff over here or something over there. So you know, I shouldn't go that way. I have to go this way. So unless you know what these deviations are, now, are they present in our movement right now? I open up the floor. Are there some deviations that could be developing in our movement right now? I don't want to criticize anyone. I'm trying to follow a quote that the devotee sent out the other day from Srila Prabhupada. Flies look for sores and bees look for honey. So I'm trying to be careful not to be critical unnecessarily, like a fly looking for a sore. I'm trying to be a bee looking for the honey of Krishna consciousness, but I'm also trying to be careful. So I'm putting it there. If you'd like to share any thoughts, best ways to avoid deviations, and are there any subtle things that may be happening in our society right now that we should be careful of? Okay, we're all in the same transcendental family. We can be honest with each other to help protect ourselves from any subtle deviation. Oh, one other one that Vishnu Gudaprabhu myself did mention was the candle phenomena in ISKCON. When devotees started making these beautiful hand-carved candles, and I'm telling you, the amount of money we were making was unbelievable. We were making so much money in Atlanta, we bought a warehouse just to produce them, but the book distribution disappeared. And I remember an incident where we had Prabhupada Adi-Lila Volume 1, 2 pallets. I mean, that's probably like 100 cases, right? And they were just sitting in the basement of one of our buildings, just sitting there because we were just making money selling candles. And the books they were starting to stick together. So a couple of us old diehard book distributors went to our temple president and said, "Prabhu, we're all from Sankirtan on Sunday. Can we take these books out on Sunday when we're not going out anywhere else, not selling candles? Can we go sell these books at the airport?" "Oh, yeah, go ahead, you can do it." That first day we went out is the day that I met Coretta Scott King, the wife of Martin Luther King. And I gave her the Lilamrita that were sitting in that basement, practically rotting because we were making so much money. And then Prabhupada actually spoke about another subtle deviation, which was selling jewelry. I can't remember the exact quote, maybe Vishnu Guru, you might remember it, but Prabhupada says, you're thinking by selling jewelry, you can enhance Krishna consciousness, something to that effect. Prabhupada was not happy with that, even though money was coming like anything. So much money was coming into ISKCON through these different programs. But if they take us off that path of preaching as the essence, and we go down this path of money is the criteria, we start judging everything, how much money the temple has. Well, the temple is successful because it has money. Well, are you preaching? Have you made some devotees? But devotees, practicing nicely? Money is not the only criteria for success in this movement. It's not. Money is a honey, as Prabhupada would say. We don't mind it. Sure, we can take money and use it for Krishna. But just because you have money You have to say, is it helping the preaching? Are we preaching more? Are we making devotees? Are we becoming Krishna conscious? So again, just to make it simple, what are some of the ways that we can avoid deviations? Does anyone have any ideas they'd like to share? Please don't be shy.
Prabhu, I think, thank you for such a wonderful points, Prabhu. It made me think, and I'm still thinking. But I think one of the ways from my personal experience is many years ago, I don't want to mention the names, don't want to mention the place, but when I was going through challenges with management and took a step back from everything, including devotees at that time. And for about a couple of years, and I remember the one person that actually came and pulled us back, as you said, that took a devotee, was Bhakti Swami.
Oh.
Amazing. And
Yeah.
he happened to be staying at our house at that time. So, and I remember one morning, it was like around 5 o'clock or something in the, and he was staying with us with a servant, and we had a 3-bedroom room. So we gave one room to him and a servant, and all 4 of us crashed in one of our daughter's room. And we gave the 3rd room for his other servant, who happened to be a female disciple. And around 5 or 6 in the morning, it was very early, he came knocking on our door, and he wanted to speak to Prikshit and I, and he poured his heart out. I didn't even brush my teeth. He says, just come. I just sat there with my mouth closed. So it's okay, just come. And the first thing he said, and he heard all the problems, he heard why we took a step back, he heard everything, whatever. I mean, we were still chanting and all that, but we didn't have devotee association at that time. Even though we were going to another place for devotee association, but it wasn't, quote unquote, how should I say, it wasn't fruitful or, well, whatever the word is. Can't think of it right now. But Bhakti Swami said that, he says, your spiritual master wants you back.
Wow.
That's what he said. And he really wants you back in the family, come back. And when he said that, after that is when I realized that the one way to avoid deviation is to share our minds and confidence with a senior devotee. Absolutely. That is the only way. And sometimes I think, Prabhu, what I have learned from my personal experience is that sometimes we look at devotees on quote unquote, and I don't want to sound so status related, but like our same level or someone who's junior to us, and we share our minds and we think that's okay and that's good. But coming from that experience, I realized is just sharing our hearts with someone who is, a devotee friend or someone who is younger or junior to us is not gonna, it has to be someone senior. It has to be someone who is so knowledgeable, someone who really is like a well-wisher. And since then I've realized that the importance of senior, not just a devotee friend, but a senior devotee, where we can wholeheartedly share our minds and have a best interest, will not judge us. That is that's the only way, because Bhakti Swami was a living proof for me. Till today, I tell him he has forgotten it, but I haven't. And then he told me, and then I told him what I was going through, and the wonderful advice that and then the second thing he said to me was, Anasuya, you just pray to Lord Nrsimhadev, is what he said, and he will help you. So that is what helped me, Prabhu.
That is, I had to write that one down. Share our minds with senior devotees, more experienced devotees.
And that's what I've learned. It has to be more experienced. It can't be someone on our level, our friend, or someone younger. It has to be. That's my personal experience.
Yeah. That's the experience of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna saw Krishna as his friend. That's why in the 11th chapter, he apologized for seeing that. He said, I offended you by thinking you're my friend. We're sitting on the same bed together. But when he realized the exalted position of Krishna, then Sisastiham Sarimam Prapanam, he began that process. It took him chapters to get to that process. But he realized the value of someone more experienced, someone senior. In that case, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So thank you so much.
And I remember even during that time, Prabhu, when we were going through those difficult times, and I think it was about, let me see, March left in 2005. It was about 2008 to 2010. It was about two years. I don't know whether that was Krishna's mercy, but to me, it's like, thank God it didn't go for 20 years. You know, it was just 2 years. Krishna Guru was so kind,
Wow.
Even though we were chanting, we were doing our own, family devotional life, but there was no service. Boo. Those 2 years for me was literally spiritual suicide because there was no service for me. And it took Bhakti Mark Swami.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's excellent. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us go deep.
Dear Krishna, I think you had a point. I think you were on.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu, please accept my humble obeisances.
So
Prabhu, it was a very insightful class. Very eye-opening. I think what I was thinking about it, and I think one of the reason of deviation could be that with my limited understanding, I see a lot of devotees creating their own services on the name of devotional service, rather than getting the services from the spiritual authority. Just because they cannot maybe go along with somebody or some kind of structure, or maybe whatever, they might have their own limitations based on their jobs or family situation. But on the name of spiritual or devotional service, they end up creating sometimes their own services, which might be right, which might be not right. We don't know, because there is no one to authorize those services. That's what I'm thinking, based on my limited understanding. It might be the cause of deviation also.
No, I had to write that one down because that's so important. Creating their own services instead of getting service from authorized authorities. It's very, very dangerous. And a small example for me was when I was a brahmachari, young bhakta brahmachari, I used to go on the front porch of the temple in the middle of the winter, barefoot, no socks, and chant my japa. I thought this is more powerful than being inside the temple room with all the devotees. I'm going to show them I'm a real yogi. I'm a little brother from the hood, right? So I'm standing there chanting japa in the freezing cold. And my temple president, again, my authority, Balabhadra, came and said, in old days, we would call each other idiots. Sometimes we use that word idiot a lot. He said, "You idiot, Bhakta Ben, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm practicing being more austere." He said, "Come inside. Why do you think we have this temple room with nice heat and all the devotees? This is nonsense. Come back inside." So that stopped me from that little bit of deviation. I don't know where that might have taken me had he not pulled me back. As Anasuya was saying, the Bhakti Mark Swami pulled me back. So yeah, it's so much better to take your service from the authorities. Of course, as a householder, you have some leverage. You can adjust according to your circumstance. Even then, you should take guidance from senior devotees. Like when I saw this little beautiful Radha Krishna deities at the temple gift shop, they were in the closet. And I was temple president during that time. Just these beautiful little deities in the closet. And I said, so beautiful. I just couldn't get my mind off Krishna's beautiful face. So before I brought them into my home, I asked Jai Pataka Swami, "Maharaj, do you think it's okay? Because I have to take care of Radha Madan Mahan." And then he said, "Are you attracted to them?" He said, I said, "Yes." He said, "Then you take them home." I didn't do it without taking the advice of a senior devotee. And I generally don't do things without consulting with senior devotees, no matter what it is. When I started preaching in the interfaith community in Atlanta, I didn't do that without talking to Sasrup Maharaj, Bhattacharya Maharaj, Bhakti Subdhamma Maharaj, Jai Bhataka Maharaj, Hridayananda Maharaj. I talked to a bunch of devotees and they said, yes, you can preach like that. So anyway, thank you so much, dear Krishna. That was a great point. Any last point?
Prabhu, one more point, because you mentioned about we have some leverage as a grahastha in home life. So, I mean, practically, like in our community, what we are seeing, because some of the devotees cannot go to temple, they have created their own kind of celebrations. Now, who knows what's going on there? And I don't know to say, because I've seen the pictures, videos sometimes. So that is one of the examples where, because they cannot come to temple or whatever reason, they've created their own celebrations of Radha Ashtami, Janmashtami, their own little, that's not the idea. The idea is to celebrate at the temple for the festivals, and then you create more festivals to outreach. I think that's our Srila Prabhupada's way of doing the thing. So that is just a small example of how people are just kind of not understanding the movement.
No, that's a wonderful observation, Prabhu. And it's not. How do you say? It's innocent in a certain way. Innocently, they're trying to do that. But as Anasuya pointed out, you should discuss these things with the senior devotees. And as you pointed out, dear Christian, you take up a service, get it from the authorities. For instance, and I'm not going to tell you all the details. I'm trying to do something right now in relationship to this other organization that I'm president of. And it's not a Hare Krishna organization, but it has devotees in this group, all kind of philosophers and all that. But we're starting a division which is dealing with urban concerns, like working with the urban communities. So in one place, what I want to do is start like a free vegetable market for the urban people, because they have something called a food desert where they can't get fresh vegetables and all that. So I want to start a free vegetable market. But I know that I can offer fruit, bananas, oranges, and all those things. And even some veggies you can offer, like lettuce and tomatoes, you can offer those to the deities, because I want to make sure they get some kind of prasadam. But I wasn't sure about other vegetables like potatoes and cabbage and all that. So what I did, I wrote to Jayananda Prabhu, who's like the deity minister in the US. I said, Prabhu, this is what I'm trying to do. And I haven't started it yet. I'm waiting to hear back from him before I even start. I want some advice. Can I do it like that? I know I can do fruits. I can offer to my deities and offer to whatever, but I'm not sure about this. I'm a devotee for almost 50 years. Jayananda is much younger than me, but he has more experience than me in this area. So I reached out to him humbly, and he always responds in such a nice way. So I'm saying, if I can do that, and this is something Krishna conscious I'm trying to do, but I'm not sure about this particular part. So before I start that, I need input. Maybe some of you might can give me some input on this, but that's my practical example. So anyway, that's very interesting. Thank you, dear Krishna Prabhu. Vishnu Gada Prabhuji, Hari Bol.
Krishna Prabhu. I don't have any additions about cabbage or potatoes. I'm sorry. But, we were talking a little bit about, devotees doing festivals and stuff outside. I mean, I would be careful about, discouraging that, just because sometimes there's difficulties that arise, and, the person will try to cooperate with, the administration, and sometimes it just doesn't work, or it's difficult. So, I mean, I would recommend that the attempt be continued to try to cooperate and stuff like that. And so, but in the meantime, doing observing festivals or observing certain programs outside, I don't think that's necessarily a deviation, as long as one follows the principles of, accepting Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya, chanting Hare Krishna, following, the philosophy and all that stuff. The danger sometimes is that we used to call it PDD. You remember PDD? You don't remember that?
Where was it?
Pure devotee disease. You don't remember that?
Now I remember.
That's what they used to call it in New York. It's sometimes when you get the opinion that only I only know what's really true. I know the real philosophy. Nobody else knows. And then that kind of is a danger, because then you cut yourself off from other devotees, from senior devotees, from people who are on from your peers and your colleagues and all, and that can lead to. So that sometimes happens. Sometimes happens for me, but hopefully I try to tamp it down by, like you said, working with other devotees. But just those comments I had.
No, that's very, very important. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Yeah, Prabhu, thank you for that input. And just in our specific situation, sometimes it becomes very tricky, because when they are doing those kind of things without any authority or without any guidance, then they are mixing a lot of things in that. And devotees who are coming to our congregation, they are totally confused. So that makes it very challenging. That's the main problem over there. But yeah, it's a tricky situation. I agree.
Mixing like what? Mixing what?
The other philosophies. I mean, they are not really dedicated to Srila Prabhupada.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's not, they're not actually following the standard procedure, standard
exactly.
philosophy.
Exactly.
So yeah, that can, yeah. Of course, people will do whatever they do, and they still do. People do that anyway. But those things we're not going to be supporting or encouraging people necessarily to go.
Yes, Prabhuji. Yeah.
No, it's excellent points. Excellent points. Back to you, Anasuya.
Prabhu, I even lost track of the time because it's such a nice topic, and this is like a discussion that is so nice and so deep and so needed. And I think one of the questions that you also had, are we having some problems within ISKCON? Yeah, I think in small pockets it still exists.
Yes.
When you were mentioning, remember the Gopis, I do hear that once in a while wherever I travel, in a different way of phrasing the sentence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think there are small pockets of it, and I think one thing that was my concern, and His Holiness Bhattacharya Swami mentioned in our GBC colleges, there are, we have a situation in ISKCON where, people want to be little Prabhupads. That's one thing that he also mentioned, which is there, rather than instead of worshiping and acknowledging and honoring and accepting.
Yeah.
Our founder Acharya is trying to accept someone else to be this junior Prabhupada, lack of a better word.
Yeah.
So I think that's also there. But this has been a really, really nice topic of deviation. Something that I think that, oh yes, Prachit can say something. Go ahead.
Haribol Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. I accept my whole obeisance.
My base question, Prabhupada.
Sometimes there are devotees trying to do namahatas and so on. Sometimes I've heard that one devotee group fights another devotee group. And I know Radhanath Swami gave in the lecture, gave an example of two brothers trying to impress the father. They are massaging the father.
Oh, yeah.
But trying to impress the father. In doing so, they wound up hurting the father, just competing. I myself was in a situation where I was giving classes, Bhagavatam classes. And then it turned out I heard some motivation by some of the leaders of that. And this is not a temple situation. This is just a private group of folks. And then there was a break off, and I wound up, on a phone call with those who had broken off, leaders from those who had broken off, and it was all petty material stuff. And so in the end, I just gradually pulled away from both sections. And what I learned from it is just stick with the temple programs. And Krishna will give you so much service to do. There won't be any problem there. So I went back to basics, and now I'm not so crazy about being part of private things for whatever reasons that they've done. Sometimes they pull off for we're going from we're getting Protestant churches out of these things now, if you know what I mean. Wow. This is also happening, and you have to be careful, very careful. Hare Krishna.
You reminded me of something very important with Bhattacharya. I was sitting next to him at a GBC president's meeting. I believe it was Dallas. And this was during the time when they were trying to bring him down from being a GBC. Now, this was their logic, because Bhattacharya Swami was still connected with some devotees at New Vrindavan, and that was during the time of the demise of Kirtananda. And New Vrindavan was cut off. New Vrindavan had so many deviations. You could write a book about it. It was amazing what was going on there. But Bhattacharya continued to connect with them and associate with them. And the GBC was upset with him and they wanted to pull him down from GBC because of that. He said, Balabhadra, they're trying to pull me out from the GBC, but the reason I go to New Vrindavan or connect with them is because once Kirtananda finally falls, they will have a connection with ISKCON. I was like, brilliant. So then after that, New Vrindavan gradually did come back. We see they're glorious right now. But Bhattacharya was actually part of that, bringing them back because he was strong enough spiritually to hang on to those devotees and encourage them even through all that turmoil. So to me, that was a very, very good example. Not to say that, we should stick our head into a lion's mouth, but if we can detect that this devotee or this group of devotees has some redeeming value or qualities, then we try our best to bring them back into the fold of as you said, Prabhu, to the basic process of Krishna consciousness. But we had to be careful, very, very careful. Vishnu Gadapa, you wanted to add something there?
I don't know if I want to go too much into this, but even just, I think last month, the Indian Bureau, there's the situation in the world is that the ISKCON is managed by the GBC, but in India they have a bureau because they all have to have their finances overseen together because of the situation and how it works in India.
Mm-hmm.
So they voted not to follow the GBC. You know that?
Yep.
Why? Because the GBC affirmed the idea that there would be female Diksha Gurus. You know that?
Yeah. I mean, that's been a big fight over that issue with the India Bureau. Big fight.
So they say that the current GBC is a deviating, and it's a big deal.
And it's important that, devotees be aware of these kinds of things. It's not like we live in some kind of bubble or it's isolated from the rest of the movement, but yeah, and there's other deviations, like there's some philosophy going on now, certain group of devotees saying that ISKCON is not following Prabhupada. We're the only ones following Prabhupada, and they're preaching this idea to people, and the innocent people don't know the difference. And these guys are doing this. It looks like they're following strictly Srila Prabhupada. But when they're criticizing on that level, the entire rest of the movement, how can you possibly say that you're following Srila Prabhupada when you're not even trying to cooperate with the rest of the movement? And it's very insidious. I guess that word insidious kind of comes back to play for me.
An interesting point. Interesting point about, you could say, well, Srila Prabhupada kind of broke with the Gaudiya Math.
Yes, I always think about that.
Yeah. But if you really look at it, Prabhupada was always trying to develop connections and revive and inviting them to preach together again. And as I'm sure you know, that he delegated or assigned Jayapataka Maharaj to be, develop I think there's a whole other organization which is the sole purpose is to liaison with the Gaudiya Math to help to try to work together. So it's not that, so we reject you. No, but we try to work. Let's work together. How can we work together? That was the impetus. Even though Prabhupada did go outside the Gaudiya Math to start ISKCON, but still he wants to work together for preaching.
Yeah, he invited them to come to New York. He said, I will serve you. I'll work with you. You come and preach. Nobody would come, That one brahmachari that he was trying to bring with him finally did come. And we invited him to the Panihati festival. And there he was. I forget his name, but he was a sannyasi at that point. He was a disciple of Prabhupada's godbrother. And he said, and he gave a Bhagavatam class today, he said that Srila Prabhupada wanted me to come, but I never had the chance to come when Prabhupada was here. Now I'm finally coming. It was really beautiful because I knew him from the Lilamrita, that brahmachari that Prabhupada wanted to bring. So Srila Prabhupada wanted the Gaudiya Math to work with him. He tried his best. They just couldn't see it. So, okay, Anasuya. I know everybody's hungry and ready to go to work and all this stuff.
But it's such a nice the discussion, such a nice topic, and really appreciate all the points and all the feedback, and such, it's nice to hear that deviation exists is how we come back to the path, like you said, and not get bitten by the crocodile, chewed up. Just come back on just come back on track. So I want to thank you so much. It's such a nice discussion, and just hearing everybody's sharing, it makes me realize how important it is that we go back to the basics of what Prabhupada gave us, and just make it simple, and make sure that we just follow what he says and not deviate from his teachings. So thank you so much for reminding us, Prabhu, and thank you to all the devotees for sharing wonderful thoughts and feedback, and for me it was a learning experience. So thank you. And thank you, and I'm losing my words here. And wishing all you a very blessed day. Vanchakraf Divyascha, Kripa Sindhaveva, Patitanam Pavanebhyo, Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Srila
Haribol, glory to
Prabhupada.
Prabhupada.
Thank you
Haribol.
so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Haribol. See you on tomorrow. Bhagavad Gita.
Yes, tomorrow evening. Can't wait, Prabhu.
Haribol.
Thank you. Haribol.